messed up, and it cost the money quite a bit of dollars. The CEO at the time, Greenberg, called me to his office, and I went in ready to be fired because I knew that was going to happen. And Greenberg invited me in, and he said, he had an American voice, ex-Vietnam chap. He invited me in and he sat me down, and I told him, sir, before you say anything, and I messed up, and here's my resignation letter. And Greenberg looked at me and he said, young man, rubbish. You've just spent the equivalent amount of 2 MBAs at Harvard educating you and making sure that you'll never do the same mistake, because what I did had cost the company quite a bit of money. But what Moses is saying is important in terms of, and this is what Greenberg told me at the time, that I think it is important for us to allow people to fail, because then that allows and encourages innovation, and that's what you need, creativity and innovation. So I did keep that job, and a few months later I was promoted because I got it right. And the Post-it also, an example, a perfect example of failure. Post-it, if you remember, the story around Post-it was there was a chap who was developing, his original intention was to develop something that was like super glue. But in that conventional sense, he failed. Luckily for 3M, they didn't fire him. And because they didn't fire him, Post-it now has one of the key sources of revenue for 3M. So an excellent point around failure and the importance of allowing people to fail. But having said that, if somebody is constantly failing, fire him or her. Don't say, oh, Chris said, allow failure year after year after year. Okay, thank you. And one of the things I want us to think about as you are asking Moses and Stephen questions around the challenges that you may face as institutions, because you have experts here with us. Think about some of the challenges you're facing as institutions, and perhaps can be able to enlighten us on that. Anybody wants to go first? Don't be like my students. When I ask my students to ask questions or anything of that sort, they are all suddenly very interested on the table and everything else. Any questions you may have for Stephen and Moses? Lady at the table there, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jacqueline Kisato from Kenyatta University. My question would go to both of you. They say for Steve Jobs to iterate and innovate, he had to create a pirate group within the big organization to ensure they come up with new ideas. My university is very stable. So when you come up with this iterative design thinking, let's create a new pathway, you tend to have a lot of opposition from stability. What are your thoughts about balancing stability and iterating, coming up with new ideas, innovating, and what is the trade-off? Because the red tape will not allow you to keep iterating in a stable organization. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. I think you're absolutely right. It's just like a body. When you introduce something new into the body, you know, the antibodies wake up and to fight it off, you know, the body almost goes into a shock. I think my answer to that, and what I've seen work, is to start small. Manage expectations. Is because again, if you set too high an expectation, in the initial phases, given it's very new, it's very likely that whatever is delivered will fall short of expectations. And then you get caught up in the delusion of expectation. So how to mitigate against that, in my view, is to start small. And starting small is tackling any challenge or any problem, either in the back office or even in the front office internally, and creating, a collaboration or a cooperation of co-conspirators, so to speak. And it's important that these people are people with influence and voice in the organization. And the other item that I've seen to work is training and development. For example, I've been to my board to do some training around certain aspects. And you find that once you've done the training, then you have created a knowledge, or you have lit a spark. You've created curiosity. And suddenly they come back to you now demanding for more, or demanding to see the results based on the new knowledge that you have created or that you have given. And then communication. It's important that through the process, you communicate very clearly what the results, what are the outcomes that you're seeing as you progress. And that will create an appetite. And then it's important then to start scaling very quickly, because you also don't want to be caught up in the trap of doing it small, and not getting it prioritized. So even though you're starting small, maintain the vision and maintain the fortitude that you're on a journey to scale. The resistance will be there. I think what I've shared is just how to manage the resistance, and you will find that in time, the resistance actually reduces because buy-in comes in with additional communication. As you share the results, buy-in comes in, funds get allocated, and you progress accordingly. What is the trade-off? There will be some sacrifice initially, because this team is autonomous, yes, but they also have a day job. And so when you have the passion and conviction, because you have seen the results and you believe in the process, then you'll have to put on both hats, deliver on your day job, but also deliver on the problem that you're trying to solve. And then with time, you'll find that your responsibility moves towards that. Of course, it's showing more value and is more sustainable for the organization in the long term. Maybe Steve, I'm not sure if you have any additional thoughts.
Thank you. I think, and maybe you're also coming from the same sector, higher education, we've been accused of being rigid, and quite so in some instances. And one of the key things, especially when you're looking at a new introduction of a concept such as design thinking, you really have to lobby. And I like the notion, in a very soft way, that every institutions have politics. And when you're looking at introduction of such a thing, you really have to be strategic and identify with leadership that is warming up to such ideas. When I was making a presentation in the double diamond, there was a whole lot of leadership. And the whole idea is, part of this to work in institution, the leadership has to buy in. And as my colleague have said, that may not happen overnight, unfortunately. I will give an instance of my case, my institution. We've been doing design thinking for quite some time, from 2016, but we've been doing it like an innovation week, where we train participants, they participate and all that. But all along, we've been doing it like a sideshow. The university was not contributing any budget. We had to partner with, organization, and we are lucky we had a partner for so long. But it is up until they were able to see the result, the startups that were coming into this. And in around 2020, the university senate and actually management were now willing to see how can we incorporate design thinking in our curriculum framework. And that is how it was born. By 2022, we actually revised all our curriculum across the programs, and design thinking was incorporated under entrepreneur and design thinking. So all students within the university now go through entrepreneurship course, which is hugely anchored under design thinking. So I know it may not be easy. And I think the other thing that, as my colleague has said, when you think about the trade-off, you have to be passionate. I'll tell you that, and actually my introduction talked about, I'm passionate about design thinking. But I'm a lecturer, by the way, and chair of department. But so much passion in design thinking that I will not miss where that discussion is happening. So you also have to stir interest among peers within within your space, so that there can be an ecosystem that is also supportive of what you're doing, so that you don't tire, even as you try, whether it's a short courses on the same, whether it's a startups within that, you don't tire, because there is that fatigue if you don't have a space and supportive network for that matter. Thank you.
One more question. Yes.
Thank you very much. I am Professor Mary Otieno from Kenyatta University, also a coach at the Chandraria Center of Business Innovation. I have two, I don't know whether I call them questions, but also observations. As you said, that design thinking is a problem-solving tool. And at the university where we teach, the faculty members or the lecturers have not resonated with change in pedagogy. And I'm looking at design thinking as a pedagogy that can actually be infused in the teaching and learning environment, whether it is a learning institution or in the non-formal environments. So the team here and the presenters, what are the success stories of changing the mindset in terms of pedagogy? Because we are talking about solving problems, how can we, as educators and entrepreneurs, ensure that the learner who is in kindergarten has started thinking the design thinking way? Are there success stories, maybe from the private sector or from businesses, that we start doing things in a different way? Because even in terms of infusing in the curriculum, it may not just come as design thinking, it may come as a methodology of teaching. Thank you.
All right, I think that speaks to the heart of higher education. And when we are seated at higher education, we are looking at CBC or CBE coming to us in 2029. So the reflection that we need to do as higher education institution is how prepared are we to accommodate those that will be coming, given the pedagogy that are used in those, that have been used on them. So you're right that part of even resistance is actually us, that we are still hanging on the old ways of learning and teaching. And part of the transformative learning that we probably need to think heavily about, if as an institution not thought about, is problem-based learning and assessment. And you're rightly so, when you talk about design thinking being looked as a pedagogy. I'll tell you, and again, I know this is also dependent on the institution and the flexibility that they have when it comes to assessment. Because why would you assess, say, entrepreneur on a paper that they write? I'll tell you, I think last week, the unit that I've talked about of entrepreneur in my university, the exam was in a hall like this, and they were presenting their ideas to panel of judges, and that is the exam. But even on other units, not necessarily even the business courses or entrepreneur, why do we need to be hooked on students going to exam hall to write exams when we can assess them based on project or based on what we call authentic assessment? Because as facilitator of learning, we need to know learning does not stop at the point where the student writes an exam. Even during assessment or what we call exam, learning is happening. So there is a lot that we need to do as learning facilitator, because we are probably the biggest impediment into moving the pedagogy a slide further, but also putting learners at the center stage. So I would say I'm lucky that I operate in an institution, and I don't know how others work. We have freedom of how the exams, we have option of exam. You can do multiple choices, you can do open book, closed book, but importantly, we are moving to project-based assessment. So student, you can give them assignment, they go to interview, identify a problem and do that, and it can start as early as the beginning of the semester. So there is a shift that we need to do, and that's what we call mindset for us to be able to move in that direction. But it's slow, but we need people who are, at the forefront to push us toward that. Thank you.
Nothing more to add.
We are due a tea break, but if it's a very quick question, we can have one more question.
Excuse me, maybe just to make a comment,
Yes.
Professor. For me, it's actually very good to see this kind of conversation, because the corporate sector gets design thinking, academia gets design thinking. I think the last challenge for us is the civil society and communities at large. I think if we can start to demonstrate the efficacy of design thinking in that space, we'll have won the battle. Sorry, my name is Mugendi Mtwaritha. I'm associated with Machakos University and the D School in Cape Town. Thank you.
Very quick one. Here.
It's actually, my name is Elaine Alo Matovu. I'm from Kampala, from the Musizi University project. And you mentioned something about design thinking as part of the pedagogy. We've been running an interesting small project together with the Michigan Tech University, which looks at educators as designers. And just looking at how they can creatively use the levers that are available to them as teachers to make sure that they are able to get the learning objectives across in a way that achieves the same things that design thinking would, but that requires oftentimes us as educators taking off the fountain of knowledge hat and putting on the designer's hat, which is not an easy thing, but perhaps it's a place that we could start. Happy to share some resources that have been shared with us. I think it's going to require us keeping the ball rolling forward and holding each other's hands and creating some kind of chain to drag each other along. So it's really just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few remarks from me. I think design thinking is a powerful tool, undoubtedly, as our guest speakers have spoken about this, for addressing complex challenges in higher education, and could be what Professor Yeno was talking about in terms of looking at it in terms of pedagogy. But I think for me, it's faculty or staff. And I think the challenge for us is looking at how do we integrate design thinking into curriculum. The examples, authentic learning, project-based learning, are examples you can think about. And so when you go for your tea break, a couple of things I want you to think about. Think about this in terms of your institutions. Where can you start applying the principles of design thinking? Is it in your teaching methods? Is it in your student services? Is it in your broader organizational strategies? And collaboration has been a key golden thread that's formed through the discussions today, this morning. So think about, when you go back, forming small teams and pilot projects. As Moses said, start small and then build up from there. So just my thank you to Moses and Stephen for sharing your expertise and for challenging us to start with thinking education through the lens of design thinking. Your insights have been invaluable and will undoubtedly inspire meaningful action. And thank you to the audience for being here. As Jay-Z would have said, you could have been anywhere else in the world, but you chose to be here today. So thank you for that. A big hand of applause for... I think it's tea time. Prof, where are we going for tea?